Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining us. This is another episode of Systems Are Messy, and I am here today with Elisha Israel. Go ahead and tell us about yourself, please.
Hey, everybody. First of all, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Elisha Israel. I'm the founder of a company called AI Digital Suite, co-founder of a company called Content Prompts, co-founder of a company called Escrow Leads as well. And basically, most of my focus is on digital marketing and helping my clients get more qualified appointments. So generally speaking, when you look at the sales process, there are a few key metrics to track. And for a lot of businesses that sell through conversations, so like not to veer too far off, but like e-commerce is like somebody just buys something online. But there are a lot of businesses that need to have a conversation in order to have a sale. And so my focus is on initiating those conversations, using digital advertising to help my clients get those appointments with quality prospects.
Awesome. So, you have a lot going on.
Thank you.
How do you keep track of all of it?
Sure. So I am a huge fan of using the G Suite environment actually. So Google Calendars, Google Sheets, Google Docs. I love it because it really allows me to access everything that I use on both mobile and desktop in a really intuitive way. I also use a software called Shift. It's a desktop application that allows you to manage your whole G Suite and a ton of other apps
Mm-hmm.
in one centralized area. So you can really quickly toggle between different Gmail accounts, between different, between your drive, between your calendar, between sheets without always having to have a million different tabs open. So that's really been helpful for just keeping everything organized as a central hub. And being able to rapidly switch between different projects, different inboxes, different calendars, different notes, all of that good stuff.
Definitely. So, what does that look like for you? Do you use the reminders? How do you set up tasks? Are they part of your calendar? Are they separate? What do you do there?
Sure. So that's a great question. Generally speaking, when I have something to do, there are one of two ways that I remind myself to do it. The first is either sending myself an email, like if I'm quickly on the go and I just really need to, because, I'll check my email every day. So generally speaking, if it's just I need a quick note to myself.
Hmm.
If it's like checking in with somebody, if I have a follow up or something like that, with that, I'll just, the second that that's supposed to happen, I'll just go to my calendar and plug in the 15-minute event right then whenever I'm supposed to check in with them. So, like, let's say I need to check in with Teddy through text message. I'll just say, check in with Teddy and maybe his last name or an initial or something like that, and then dash text. And I'll just save it. Let's say he tells me, let's check in on February 2nd. I'll be like, great, cool. Immediately, I'll just go save it. And then I don't have to ever think about it because on February 2nd, I'll wake up and boom, let me look at my calendar. Oh, I have to check in with Teddy. Now, there are a lot of other tools that allow you to do this. There are a lot of CRMs. That's kind of, as my teams grow, that's going to be a space that we're going to be moving into because what I do right now is really good as for myself. It works really
Hmm.
well for myself. But the next step for me is when I'm looking at being able to have that communicated across a team.
Right.
And so that's definitely something that's useful. I know with one of my clients, I manage a bunch of their ad accounts, like 15, 20-ish, I don't know the exact number. And so they, they, use, I mean, I also use Slack a little bit, not as much as I should, but like they use Slack for communications. They use Trello to keep everything super organized. And then also combined with like the G Suite environment, Google Drive and all of that, so it's really easy for me to, like, when I'm going into checking an account, let's say I'm launching a new campaign for them, to just quickly go to the Trello board, grab all the resources, go to the Drive, grab all the resources, check the Slack, confirm, go to the ad account, launch everything. So in terms of, I have some improvement on my own systems in terms of building out structures for teams. But for where I've been as primarily a solo operator that collaborates with a lot of other individuals and companies, uh, what I've been doing has been working really well. But I definitely am aware that as I take these next steps into team building, there's going to be a lot of process gaps that come up just from like being able to communicate and being able to set reminders for people other than myself, to set tasks for people other than
Right.
myself.
So it doesn't sound like much is slipping through the cracks for you now, but it could in the future unless you build out more robust team style systems.
Yes.
Got it. Got it. So how do you review or process then?
In terms of
Task
review.
management, calendars, do you check on it daily, weekly, monthly? What does that look like for you?
Sure, that's a great question. So generally speaking, what I look to do is I look to set targets. I have a general range of annual targets, and I break those down into quarterly targets, and then I break those down into monthly and weekly targets. And then from there, I basically just have to check and see if I'm hitting those targets. And let's say I have a target to set X amount of appointments for a specific week, then I know then there are specific actions that I need to do in order to set that amount of appointments. And then I can break that down into daily tasks. This is something that I'm still improving on, if I'm being transparent. But that kind of structure, when you start with the end goal in mind and then
Mhm.
reverse engineer it all the way from the end result all the way down to the daily micro actions that you need to achieve in order to get them, is incredibly powerful.
Yeah, it definitely is. And the review process is definitely a big part of that, I find, on both a daily and weekly and monthly and quarterly. Like every time you have those milestones where you're evaluating the goals, you also have to review them
Yeah,
and
and I
process
think
them.
it's really important, and this is something that a lot of people mess up with goal setting. Is a lot of people, and I've done it myself a ton. A lot of people set some goal that they want to achieve, whether it's ambitious or minor, it doesn't really matter. And they're like, "This is what I want to do," and then they just have that. They hold on to it. I mean, it's you know, you see this a lot with New Year's resolutions. Somebody's like, "Oh, I want to lose X amount of weight," or "I want to get an X amount of shape," but then they don't actually build a process around actually reaching that, and
Right.
so it stays abstract.
Hmm.
And so I think what a lot of people miss in goal setting is that you actually have to go ahead and put defined, specific, measurable metrics for different stages of reaching that goal. And that when you have metrics in place, it's much easier to actually check, am I hitting these? Okay, well, I know that if I want to get X amount of appointments, I need to do Y amount of X or Z action.
Hmm.
So not to overcomplicate things, but like if you want to get to this point, you need to do a certain amount of something that gets you to that point. And
Right.
so from there, you can break it down and see how much of that do I actually need to do on a daily, as you said, on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, on a quarterly basis.
So, what do you wish you could do better?
Oh, so many things. Everything. I wish I could do better at everything. I think, realistically speaking, I am very good at theory. I absorb information really fast. I'm a very quick learner. I'm very curious, so I pick up information just out of curiosity because I ask questions. Uh, and I think the reality is that when it comes down to both, um, well, I'll bundle into one. When it comes down to consistency of execution, I definitely have a little bit of a gap there. And so it's very easy to, and I think a lot of people will resonate this. It's very easy to say, this is my annual goal. This is my quarterly target for that. This is my monthly target for that. This is my weekly thing. And then it gets down to the daily actions. And then suddenly, like, you missed a day, or something came up, or a day got busy, or you weren't feeling great that day. And then suddenly it's like 2 weeks in and you've only hit it like 7 out of 14 days. And you're like, oh. So I
Yep.
think to me, if I'm being honest with myself, that's where my biggest area of growth. And if I'm looking at, I've set some pretty aggressive targets for myself this year, but at the end of the day, the only real goal that I have is to do the daily actions that will earn me those targets.
I think that when you're able to set the high level goals and break it all the way down into small daily actions, it allows you to build a system around those things so that even if everything else goes to hell, you've done the one or two things that you know that will move you forward. And that really does make a measurable difference.
I agree. And the nice thing about that is, especially for a like somebody who's going from like a solo entrepreneur and into building an organization, or an organization that's looking to systemize and potentially automate some of what they're doing, having that your task broken down into a micro process level where you have each step mapped out. Um, as an organization leader, it makes it very easy for you to delegate and train people because you know every step and you have that SOP, that standard operating process, mapped out. But then also at a larger organizational level, if there's something that is being done repeatedly, when you have that mapped out, it actually becomes very easy for you to create software around it as well, because you know every step, and then you can be like, oh well, we can code that, we can code that, we can code that, we can code that. And you see a lot of larger organizations making significant investments in this area where, you know, they are looking to find out what are these repeatable tasks that 50 years ago we were doing paper and pen, and then we digitized it, but we never actually thought, how can we improve this, and how can we use technology and software to improve this. So we see a lot of that going on over the past 10 years in the enterprise space. I mean, 10, 20 years, but and it's continuing and continuing. um, and actually, I'm really excited about this because it allows us to put the high value human perspective into more strategic and creative thinking rather than just mindless drone tasks.
Yeah, I agree. I think the more we get to automation, the more people will actually be able to do the thinking things, the arty things, the
Yeah.
fun things. And I know it's big and scary now, but as we move towards it, there will definitely be more time and space for those things.
And it's interesting when you look at the white collar revolution that happened in like the late 40s, early 50s. There was a lot of fear that it would take a lot of jobs out of the economy. I don't have an exact reference material. I wish I did. I've seen this a couple of times, so I'm comfortable talking about it. But there was a lot of fear about that it would remove jobs from the economy, and I think we're seeing a lot of that same anxiety and fear right now around automation. But what actually ended up happening was that it opened up a huge amount of new job sectors because we actually opened up
New
more.
fields of thought or study or exploration. That's how that
Exactly, and
works.
more room for the brain to think, for
Right.
the human brain to be creative, for it to be strategic, whatever the it is at that moment. And so it allowed us to, as you said, explore new fields in a really incredible way, which has led to, I mean, it's 2020 right now. It's like, whoo!
I know, it really is kind of mind blowing in that way. And I am very glad to be a part of the thinking around systems and automation. It's scary to people, but for me, it is very exciting to see what is coming.
Yeah, and I think that there is, for as genuine a fear there is around stuff like, you know, workers who are aging out of the job force and don't really have the opportunity to retrain. I mean, historically, we're terrible at retraining. There is genuine concerns about what do some of these older workers who spent their entire lives in certain industries that they've now lost their jobs. There is genuine concern there, but and there are a lot of different ideas about how to address that. Um, and I'm not going to go into it because it's just way too much nuance. Um, but the thing that's really exciting to me is when you look at these new generations, and we're seeing it. I mean, I think when you look at the online business world, is a great example of an industry that has bloomed out of innovation because people had the time and energy to actually um, create.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think actually when we're looking at the economies of the future, we're and this may not be anything new, but we're looking at going from a, you go to your job, you do the thing, you do the mindless task, and you come home, moving into much more of a peer-to-peer economy, where we have individuals who have a thing, they offer it, and then, based on a whole numerous variety of factors, they're successful or not. But we see that happening on a much more peer-to-peer level rather than in the job market level. And I think, I was talking to a friend the other day, and she's kind of going through a hard time right now. And I was like, hey, like, you have experience as a personal assistant. Why don't you offer that on a remote basis? And it was interesting to me because she was like, oh yeah, let me get my resume together and apply for remote jobs. And I was like, no, write a list of
No,
10 to
that's
20 people.
so not how that works right now.
Right.
Yeah,
I was like, write
yeah.
a list of 10 to 20 people that that are business owners, and then reach out to them and tell them that you're thinking about creating this offer. Ask them if they'd be willing to answer a few questions, have a quick survey on the phone or through a Google form or something like that. And then afterwards be like, hey, I see you're having these issues. I know I can help you with that. Would you be open to talking about that? It's so like,
But it's a completely different mindset. And
yeah.
as we shift into it, and I do think our systems and how we talk about that really does play into the larger conversation, because people do not see job seeking at all in the same way as you and I see client seeking. And that's a shift we're going to have to work towards, because the gig economy is not going away at all.
And I think, realistically speaking, I think calling it like the gig economy is doing it a disservice, because it's well beyond that at this point. There are people who are creating and building incredible businesses that do incredible work based on this peer-to-peer model, rather than on like the old, buy a building, fill up an office space, have people come in every day, show up to the office, which, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, some kinds of businesses need that, but uh, there's just so much more flexibility and opportunity because of tools like the internet nowadays. And so I'm just really excited to see how we continue to leverage these systems, how we continue to leverage these tools, and what opportunities that continues to create going forward.
So that's a perfect segue into, what are you working on right now?
Sure. So there's a few different projects that I have. I have some business projects. I'll talk about those in a second. I also have some personal projects, and I'll talk about those in a second. Uh, as of right now, starting with the business projects, I have three different brands, with the fourth brand launching soon. So I have my core business, which is AI Digital Suite, which is helping consultants and experts get discovery calls using digital advertising. Another business that I have is called Escrow Leads, which is helping real estate professionals, realtors, real estate teams, real estate brokers, loan officers, helping them get survey qualified leads so that they can, get more transactions and closings. Very similar offer in the solar space. That brand is going to be launching soon. And then I also recently started a business called Content Prompts with my friend Hillary. And so Content Prompts is this really lovely tool that we have. It's $10 a month, and every day you get an email in your inbox that gives you a content idea from content marketers, Hillary and myself. And so basically, on top of that, we also have, every 2 weeks we have a free training for our clients, and every Sunday we have content jams. So all of us hang out together with all of our clients, and we just kind of hang out together and we write together. So we'll do a 15-minute writing session, and then like a 5 to 15-minute feedback session for everybody, and then a 15-minute writing session, and then a 5 to 15-minute writing session. And this whole entire Content Prompts thing kind of evolved out of Hillary and I both realizing that we were like a little bit inconsistent with our content, and we really would have liked to have some tool that delivered an idea to us. But everything that we saw was just like, there's content calendars out there. And it's like, okay, you download the PDF and then you use it for a week, and then it gets buried somewhere on your computer and you completely forget about it. So with the daily delivery, that really solves that. And then we also just wanted to add in extra support. So the trainings and the content jams are really a way for us to provide an extra level of support to our community. So as of right now, that's $10 a month. That contentprompts.com. And then at the end of Q1 2020, that's going to be going up to $17 a month. And over the year, we're going to be raising that price a little bit more. But if you sign up now, it's $10 a month for lifetime access. We're also going to start bringing in guest trainings as well, which we're really excited about. In terms of personal stuff, I just say there's kind of a fair amount of stuff. I have a book that I have recently finished. So I'm in the middle of my launch strategy for that. So we're looking probably like a 2 or 3 quarter process, just because there's a lot of personal branding work and list building work that I need to do before I launch the book in order to properly launch it through a traditional publisher. But I'm very excited that the book is finished, and now I'm kind of on the next phase. Then I also have my music project, Dialu, and so I'm really excited. I'm going to be releasing 3 EPs of original music this year through that. I've had, over the past 3 years, a ton of music that I've 3.5 years, a ton of music that I've written. And then the past 1.5 years, I've really been focused on just improving my mix downs, more of the technical side of the audio engineering of it. And so really excited to kind of let this next batch of music release over the course of this year, so that I can it's funny, like, when you have creative projects, if you hold on to them for too long, they get very stagnant, and it becomes kind of like an energy blockage. And so I've been holding on to this like bundle for like close to 3 years, and so I'm really excited to kind of let it go, and then once I finish that, get back to composing, because it's been a long time since I've really composed consistently. And it's been well worth it, just because the technical side of my music has improved a lot. But at the same time, there's a certain level of energy and fun that comes from just composing music in a very free and open way that I haven't tapped into in a long time. Anyways, as I said.
Well, that's exciting. I'd love for you to keep me posted on all of that. So you are the epitome of what it means to have good systems in place, because you get to take on all of these fun little side projects when you have the time to do those things. So that's what that looks like, right? Having systems in place allows you to build in time for the things you really care about, not just the work, but the things you want to do and the things that you love. So that's great.
Yeah, and the nice thing about this is a lot of what I'm building is designed with system design in place. So let's take a look at like the escrow leads project. Those campaigns are extremely templated, just on our side.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we know that generally speaking, we're doing the exact same thing every time. You know, there might be some tweaks like changing somebody's name or something like that, but generally speaking, we're doing the exact same thing every single time. We know that. So what that does is that allows me, looking ahead, to know once I reach a certain capacity, I can record a little training course, and then I can hire somebody and give that to them, and then fully delegate that. So it's really important, like, when you're looking at your systems, and especially if you're thinking about organizational design, it's really important to do the best that you can to have duplicatable, repeatable processes.
Yes.
And like those words, I'm going to say it again: duplicatable, repeatable processes that create repeatable results.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have that, and you're providing a business result, you are so far ahead of the game. It is insane. There are so many people out there who are just kind of wishy-washy, but if you have metrics and you have repeatable results and a duplicatable process, there's no limit. There's no limit on what you can do.
I totally agree. Elisha, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for coming. Y'all have an amazing day. Bye now.
Thanks for having me.